What do you do when your wife invites a stranger's hands at a club and then says you're the problem for noticing? How do you survive the group chats, the toasts, and the videos while you quietly build order from their chaos? Can a lawful process restore dignity when a crowd decides your pain is content? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Lucian, and I'm telling this quietly because volume never fixed a broken line. The night at the club did not end when the music stopped. It followed us home like a bright echo that refused to fade. She called what happened playful and harmless. I said we needed rules that protect respect and safety. I kept my voice low and my hands still. I noticed 2 mugs on opposite counters, a small shape of distance that felt simple and true. I placed a dated USB on my desk and turned the lock once. My phone showed a soft reminder, downtown 2:15 p.m., and I let it pass without sound. On the wall planner, I circled one day in red and put the marker back where it belonged. A thin binder labeled Utilities took a new sleeve, even if empty for now. I opened a spreadsheet with initials and dates, then minimized it when footsteps crossed the hall. I chose the guest room and smooth sheets over arguments and sharp words. I told myself to record facts, not pain, to protect our child first, to keep work clean and steady. I decided I would handle everything properly, and only properly. I came home from the club with a steady walk and a quiet plan, because I knew loud reactions feed crowds, but calm helps truth breathe. The bass still thumped in my bones, and the night air clung to my shirt, but I kept my steps even from elevator to door. Inside the kitchen, I set my keys in their dish and placed 2 mugs on opposite counters without comment. She leaned against the sink with a smile used for photos, not for people. I asked in a level tone what she wanted me to understand about what I saw on the dance floor. She said it was only playful, a club thing, nothing serious. I said respect is not seasonal. She rolled her eyes and asked why I always make simple things heavy. I said lines exist to keep nights from becoming stories we regret in daylight. She laughed softly and said I should relax. I did not laugh. I counted 3 breaths and watched the second hand on the stove clock complete its circle. I told her I did not like a stranger's hands near her body while she looked at me like I was the wrong one in the room. She said the moment meant nothing and that I was performing control for an audience that did not care. I said I did not need an audience. I said I needed order in our house and safety for our child and clarity about what we call consent and what we call disrespect. She called me rigid. I said I am careful. She said everyone does a little flirting. I said flirting is not a license. She said I ruined the vibe. I said the vibe was already ruined when a boundary became a dare. My voice stayed low. My hands stayed still. I opened the small desk drawer and took out a dated USB. I slid it into the laptop and watched the screen wake. A spreadsheet with initials and dates appeared where I had left it. I added 1 time from the club and 1 short note, then minimized the window when I heard her footsteps in the hall. I did not hide. I preserved context. I turned the key in the drawer and let the lock click once. The sound settled the room the way a period settles a sentence. On the fridge, I placed a small sticky note that said bring forms, and I did not explain it. On the wall planner, I circled a day in red and put the marker back exactly in its place. My phone displayed a silent entry I had made earlier, downtown 2:15 p.m. I let it fade and placed the phone face down, because silence is also a choice. She said social friends were already laughing at my stiff face on the rooftop later, and that the poll Ivy posted about jealous husbands was trending. I said polls do not change facts. She said facts depend on who tells them first. I said I prefer truth that can repeat under oath and under morning light. She said I was dramatic. I said I was detailed. I opened a thin binder labeled Utilities and slid an empty sleeve inside to remind myself that space for records must exist before records arrive. I flipped the mail so the addresses face down and left 1 envelope unsealed on the outbox tray. I placed our mugs back where I wanted them, 1 near the kettle, 1 by the fruit bowl, like small signals pointing in different directions. In the hallway, I noticed the guest room door slightly ajar. I pressed the edge and felt a warmer patch on the cover where someone had sat earlier in the evening before we left. I smoothed the sheet without comment and adjusted the pillow by 1 inch until the fabric lay flat. I told myself that order is not revenge. Order is relief. I checked on Nico, pulled his blanket up a little, and watched his breath for 2 counts. I returned to the kitchen and washed the mug I had not used because clean metal tells me that a night has been closed on purpose. Back in the living room, I opened my notebook and wrote what happened at the club in plain lines. Music too loud for real talk. Mine was the only outstretched hand, and a stranger used my hesitation like an invitation. I wrote that I stepped back when she refused my palm because no one should be forced into anything by anyone. I wrote that phones rose fast and truths fall slower. I wrote that I will not argue in public rooms. I underlined will not argue. I wrote that my job is to protect my son from scenes and protect my work from spills. I set the pen down. She asked if I would sleep in our room. I said I would sleep where I could rest. She said avoiding the bed was punishment. I said it was a boundary. She asked if I was planning something. I said I planned only calm. She said she would tell her mother I was acting like a guard. I said she could tell anyone anything. My actions would stay the same. Her smile slipped and then returned, lighter, brighter, practiced. She lifted her phone to capture a selfie and angled the background away from me, like truth was a lamp you turn until it flatters. I watched the stove clock again. I took one slow breath, then a second, then a third. I said we would discuss schedules in the morning. I said there would be rules around nights out. I said public posts about me would be treated as public statements. She said I was threatening her. I said I was explaining consequences for choices. She called me heartless. I said I was steady. I moved through the house and listened to the noises that tell a story of a building at rest. Refrigerator hum, pipe sigh, elevator motor far off in the shaft. I set my phone to do not disturb for everyone except the school and my sister. I opened my browser and checked 3 tabs I had saved. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. I did not read them all the way. I just confirmed they were there. A small Cloud Sync pop-up said, "File uploaded successfully and faded." I closed the lid of the laptop and pressed my hand on it for a moment, like I was telling it to sleep without dreams. I wrote a short list in the notebook. Keep my voice calm, keep Nico safe, keep the house in order, keep work clean, keep records kind. I added one more line, handle it properly. I underlined properly once. I turned out the kitchen light and let the room sit in quiet gray. I took the guest room pillow and pillowcase and remade the bed like I was drawing a straight line across a messy page. I placed my wallet and keys on the dresser and noticed a new key on the ring, small and unfamiliar. I turned it once between my fingers and set it down. I would remember its shape in the morning. The hallway air was cooler than the kitchen, and the floor under my feet felt like it belonged to people who told the truth. Morning arrived like a checklist, and I welcomed it because lists do not lie. I brewed coffee, packed Nico's lunch, and set our 2 mugs on opposite counters again. Not as a message, only as a map. He asked about soccer after school. I said the plan was simple and steady. We drove in quiet, counted 3 blue cars, and waved at the crossing guard. At the curb, I waited until he stepped through the door, then I watched the door close. I let the calm sit for one long breath before turning the key. On the way to work, I kept the radio off and the window a finger's width open, because air helps when thoughts try to run. A small calendar reminder slid across my phone screen at a red light. Downtown, 8:30 a.m., meeting personal. I dismissed it without sound and moved forward when the light changed. The open plan office had the usual hum, plus a thinner sound like people trying not to look. I logged in, checked the routing board, and answered 2 messages about a late pallet. Someone laughed and then pretended to cough. I kept my back straight and my eyes on the dock map. I created 2 folders on my desktop and named them Archive A and Archive B. I copied the spreadsheet with initials and dates into both. The names stayed as initials, the dates stayed as dates. I added yesterday's time marks. I minimized the window when a chair squeaked behind me. I taped a small USB under the inside lid of my desk drawer, just beneath a plain folder marked taxes. The tape held. I closed the drawer and let it click. I set a silent phone alarm for paper drop, not because anything was dropping today, but because habits keep hands honest. A link hit the team chat from someone who wanted to show a joke about clubs and jealousy. I did not click. Another link followed, a story repost from Ivy's feed with a poll that asked if a husband should own a knight. I took a screenshot, saved it to Archive A, and then copied it to Archive B. I opened the manifest screen and focused on pallet weights. My shift manager, Dimitri, passed by and tapped the edge of my cube. He said there would be a quick word later, and his tone carried concern, not threat. I said I was available any time, he said after the morning checks. I nodded and returned to the manifest, because work is best when it is a wall between you and noise. At 10, Mira from HR sent a neutral chat. She asked for a brief check-in, nothing formal, just a touch point about public posts that might relate to me. I wrote that I appreciated the outreach and could meet at 10:30. She confirmed. I gathered my small notebook and kept my phone on silent. On the way to the printer for a label sheet, the machine coughed a blank page first, as if it wanted to speak. I let the blank sit in the tray and took only my label. 2 coworkers lowered a phone as I passed and complimented a chart that did not belong to them. I agreed that the chart looked organized and kept moving. The HR room was cool and smelled like new paper. Mira asked if my work environment felt safe. I said yes. She asked if anyone had crossed a line. I said no, and I wanted to keep it that way. She said to let her know if anything changed. I said I would. Her tone stayed procedural. My answers stayed short. She noted that personal matters sometimes spill into office culture and that the company wanted to prevent any harm. I said I understood and that my focus would remain on tasks and schedules. She thanked me and said her door was open. I thanked her for the check-in and returned to my desk. The entire meeting lasted 9 minutes by my watch. I updated a route, cleared a duplication, and approved overtime for a driver who had waited through a loading delay caused by a misscanned pallet. These were simple problems with simple solutions, and simple solutions can carry a man through a day heavier than it looks. A new ping showed Ivy's poll now had hundreds of votes. I saved one more screenshot and did not engage. A call labeled private lit my phone and went dark after 4 rings. I wrote the time in the corner of a sticky note and slid it under my keyboard. I ate an apple, answered a question about a liftgate, and approved a fuel surcharge. Dimitri messaged that he was free for our quick word. I walked to the small conference nook. He stood with a posture that told me he knew more than he would say. He mentioned some online noise, said he did not care about private lives, and asked if I had what I needed to keep focused. I said yes. He said to log anything that affected deliveries. I said nothing had. He said to go home early if I needed. I said I preferred to complete the shift. He nodded, said he respected that, and told me to knock if anything changed. I thanked him and returned to my station. I logged the time of our talk in my notebook, not as proof, only as a habit. At lunch, I drove to the supermarket because buying ordinary things steadies a house. I chose bread, milk, rice, and soap. The store had a loud song in the background, but the aisles made their own hush. Near the condiments, I saw a woman from Ivy's feed. She glanced at me, then at her phone, then at the floor. I kept moving. In the next aisle, a man in a team jacket looked at my face and then rolled his cart away like he was avoiding a story that might stain his jacket. I checked the time, then the list, then the line. At checkout, the cashier worked fast with a polite mouth that could not find neutral. Her phone sat under the counter, face up, and it lit with a group chat. My surname appeared in the preview. She glanced up, then bagged 2 items in one bag and 1 item alone, as if space could fix a feeling. I counted the items, paid, and wrote the time on the receipt near the printed timestamp. I wrote checkout ping in small letters, a quiet note to my future self. I thanked her and took the bags. The bagger held the door a second longer than necessary. I stepped into air that felt like clean paper. In the car, I placed the bags in the trunk and sat for a beat with the engine off. A calendar note slid across my lock screen for tomorrow. Downtown, 1:35 p.m. Meeting, personal. I let it pass. I looked at the clean line of the dashboard and told myself to keep my lines clean too. On the drive back, I kept to the right lane and took the long way to avoid construction. A notification appeared from the community hall account about an event tonight. I did not open it. I parked, carried the bags to the break room, and placed a note on my lunch that said, "Save for later," because I wanted one thing outside the reach of anyone's opinion. Back at my station, the team chat filled with a meme that used my first name in a rhyme about control. I did not reply. I saved the image to Archive A and copied it to Archive B. I closed the chat. A coworker stopped by and asked if I had the time for the liftgate training video. I said yes and opened the module. We watched a man in a bright vest explain straps and angles. It was blessedly dull. When the video ended, my phone buzzed with a new tag from Ivy's story. I set the phone face down and wrote a line in my notebook. Do not react to bait. Keep receipts, not rage. By mid-afternoon, the floor noises settled into the usual rhythm, and I felt my breath match the forklift beeps. Work has a way of treating attention as currency, and I paid in full. I confirmed a route for the night crew and closed my queue. I cleaned my desk, wiped the keyboard, and aligned my pens. I checked the tape under the drawer. The USB held fast. I locked my screen and stretched my back. Dimitri stepped around the partition with a look that said the quick word was now. He asked for 5 minutes in the hallway, and his tone stayed practical. As I stood, my phone lit again with a bright block of messages from a group chat. Ivy's poll screenshot sat on top, and my name sat in the middle like a hinge. The rooftop line moved in short bursts like a stuttering tape, and I stood beside Dimitri in the hallway until the moment passed. Then I clocked out on time because precision keeps a man afloat when rooms try to pull him under. I drove home on side streets that let me see the small lives in windows, and when I parked, I took 1 minute in the car to breathe in 4, out 6, then walked inside with the steady kind of quiet that refuses to dress up as anger. The apartment held the afternoon light like water in a bowl. I set my keys down, placed our 2 mugs on opposite counters again, and checked the wall planner without touching the red circle. My phone lit with the community hall flyer. I dismissed it. Another notification slid across the top. Ivy's story announced a rooftop stop after Club Energy. I told myself I would not accept invitations from people who thought pain was content. I also told myself I would not be surprised if the night tried to find me anyway. Evening cooled the glass. Maya came out in a dress designed to be seen by phones, and she asked if I planned to brood or be normal. I said I would be steady. She said steady meant boring. I said steady meant safe. She said safe was for people without followers. I said safety was for people with children. She smiled at a camera that was not in the room and said she was headed to the club for a friend's set, then maybe the rooftop, and that I could come if I promised not to police Joy. I said I would arrive for 20 minutes, stand near the exit, and leave early. She said, do what I want. She would not manage me. I chose a plain shirt and shoes I could stand in for a while. I put my phone on silent except for school and Rhea. I slipped a dated USB into my jacket pocket and felt its solid corner like a truth with edges. I added a quiet calendar reminder for tonight, downtown 10:05 p.m., and set it to no sound. The club floor pulsed in stripes of light, and bodies made a moving maze. I kept to the rim because I have learned that staying one step from the center saves arguments. The DJ announced names I did not recognize. Ivy's circle recorded everything twice. A man with a grin like a dare drifted toward Maya and framed his hands in a way that tested whether anyone would say no. I lifted my palm between them once. An open gesture, not a shove, and I stepped back when Maya's face told me I was not welcome in the frame. I chose restraint because restraint is not weakness, restraint prevents harm. The man laughed toward his friends as if crowds were courts and noise was law. I memorized his watch band and shoes and the chipped knuckle on his right hand. I wrote nothing. The room was too bright for writing. I moved to the smoking patio where the air faked a breeze. So phones followed nothing in particular and made it a moment. Someone asked if husbands could own nights like songs. I did not answer. I let the question die. Maya came outside with Ivy, who said she loved how I held space for freedom. I said I hold space for safety. She laughed and lifted her phone. I kept my face even and my body half turned to the exit. Maya said I always make water heavy, and the phrase stayed in my pocket like a small stone. I checked my screen and saw the silent reminder. Downtown, 10:05 p.m. I dismissed it without tapping, then opened my browser and confirmed 3 tabs still loaded. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. I did not read, I only checked presence. I set the phone face down on the railing. A bouncer asked people to clear the stairwell, and I thanked him because order that protects strangers deserves thanks. We drifted to the rooftop after midnight like we were following a script written by a room. The elevator bell sounded like a timer starting. Wind traced the edges of jackets, and the skyline had its usual confidence. People formed islands. I chose a spot between the stair door and the heaters. If a night wants to go wrong, it often begins with blocked exits. Ivy shouted for a circle and said we should toast to untamed souls. The phrase rose like a banner and hid the smallness underneath. A friend looked at me and asked if I felt included. I said I was present. He said present was not the same as alive. I said alive includes calm. He smiled like he had won and walked away. Maya retold the club moment as if she had been the generous one keeping everyone amused. Strangers laughed because laughter is cheaper than thought. When the word consent touched the air, she called it a buzzkill, which is how people dismiss rules when rules prevent spectacle. I kept my hands at my sides and my voice off. I counted 7 bulbs along the parapet nearest me, then counted the gaps between them. A server offered sparkling water, and I took a glass and set it near my elbow. I prefer water that does nothing dramatic. The rooftop had a clipboard on the welcome table for future events. The top page wore a single word in bold, statement. No lines, no letterhead, no shape except the word. I touched the edge of the board and returned it. My phone pulsed once with a group chat ping, and my surname sat in the preview like a hinge between stale jokes. I locked the screen and watched a drone move past a crane. A man in a denim jacket repeated the stranger's first name from the club like a trick to conjure heat. It did not work on stone and wind. It did work on phones. More lenses turned. Someone said we needed a speech for the feed. Ivy raised her glass and called for quiet with a clap. People shuffled inward, and phones lifted like small towers. I did not step into the ring. I held my place and made sure I was not in anyone's path. Maya took her position near the heater, where the light makes skin look like a promise. She said nights are about play, and play is harmless, and control is the only crime that matters. I heard the words and filed them under image over substance, A few heads dipped like they wanted to agree without doing the full work of thinking. The wind lifted napkins and laid them back down. I felt a cold line under my collar and let it stay. My attention split into two tasks: keep the peace of my body and keep a record of phrases that would not make sense in the morning. I opened a notes draft and wrote 4 words: play, harmless, control, crime. I closed the draft before anyone noticed. Across the roof, the denim jacket man angled so his camera caught my face and Maya's grin in the same line. I turned my shoulders slightly so the heater's pole cut the frame. He frowned, then smiled at himself, and kept filming. It is hard to admit that not all scenes belong to you. A volunteer from the venue asked people to clear a lane so staff could move a cart. I stepped aside, thanked her, and watched who else made space. The ones who did not were the same ones who planned to be rescued from their own ideas. Maya whispered to Ivy, and Ivy's mouth made a delighted "oh," the kind made by people who love cliffhangers more than outcomes. The circle tightened. The toast began. Phones rose. The denim jacket man said the stranger's first name again, and asked the room if the night belonged to men who said no or women who said play. The sentence carried its own trap, because it erased the equal rule that no one has the right to anyone. A camera flash exploded white on the glass, wiping out edges for a breath. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a bright ping from the same group chat as earlier, and my surname glowed in the preview. The family restaurant leaned into the idea of comfort with soft lights and framed photos of boats that never left the shore, and our table ran long enough to seat competing stories. The host guided us to the middle row where a birthday banner waited for a cousin, and place cards divided the room into neat opinions. I chose a chair at the edge where I could see the entrance and the window both. Maya sat near the cake spot, face turned toward the room as if light were currency. Ivy lined up phones and laughed like laughter could launder a night. Marta, her mother, announced that dinner would be about unity, and the word hung over the plates like a decoration that forgets gravity. I poured water for Nico and for myself and reminded him that pasta arrives hot and patience keeps tongues unburned. He nodded and swung his legs in tiny measured arcs under the chair. A cousin asked whether work still kept me busy. I said schedules and pallets generally obey physics. The cousin said reality can be harsh. I said reality can be helpful. Maya reached for the menu and called the club a harmless episode. I kept my eyes on the salt. The server smiled as if trained to absorb tension, then set bread down like a peace offering. Between salad and mains, chatter migrated to the rooftop retelling. Ivy said I had performed control. Marta said young marriages need air. A friend of a friend claimed modern love demanded play, as if the word could rewrite consent. I let the sentences flow past my face like rain on glass. When Nico asked whether we could visit the playground after cake, I said weather was kind tonight, and swings would be fine. He grinned and returned to his fork. The cake arrived with sparkler candles that spit light and smoke, and I clapped for the cousin, and I clapped for my son, and I did not clap for the script. Phones rose. Ivy sang loudly and pointed a lens at me when the chorus said family. I lifted my glass to my son and lowered it to the table. The frosting knife flashed under the lights and then disappeared back into its sheath of paper. People sliced joy into portions they could swallow. I took a small piece and tasted sugar without memory. At the register, I paid our part and thanked the host for steady service. Outside, the air rinsed the room from our clothes. We walked to the park with the slow pace of people who know a child's happiness is not improved by speed. The swings hung like commas in a long sentence. Nico chose the middle chain set and held tight. I pushed once and again, matching the squeak to my breath. He asked if we were angry with each other forever now. I said I was choosing steady, not angry. He asked whether a stranger is allowed to touch someone when music is loud. I said rules do not change with volume. He asked why Mommy said it was a joke if rules do not change. I said sometimes people call a rule a joke when they do not want to follow it. He looked at the sky and kicked higher, then lower, like he was tuning himself. I stood close enough to catch, far enough to let him fly inside a safe arc. 2 teenagers set a phone on the low wall and aimed it at the swings. They changed the angle when they realized my face would not play background. A runner looped past the fountain and tied a shoe, eyes on ground, ears on whatever saves runners from their own thoughts. The night settled into a rhythm the city understands. On a bench, I opened my phone and checked the calendar, then added a quiet note for later in the week. Downtown 11:20 a.m., no location, no invite. I made it silent. I took a single photo of a document I had prepared earlier, just the word statement at the top, no letterhead, and filed it to a hidden album. The cloud badge flashed, file uploaded successfully, and vanished like it had been on a timer. I put the phone away and focused on chains, shoes, and sky. Nico asked if we could get ice cream after swings, or if ice cream would make bedtime late. I said we would save ice cream for a weekend morning when sweetness helps the day start kind. He said the plan made sense. He likes plans that keep their promises. We left when the swing links cooled under the lights and the wind turned thin. In the car, we counted 3 buses and a woman in a red coat who talked with her hands to nobody we could see, and we wished her a warm evening. At home, I set 3 binders on the shelf, home, auto, bank, and aligned their spines so the labels read like calm instructions. I slid a clear sleeve into bank and then closed the cover because the point is having space ready, not filling it for show. On the wall planner, I traced the red circle with a finger and did not press the marker down a second time. I placed our mugs on opposite counters again and rinsed the sink dry because clean metal returns breath. In the hallway, I tested the new key on my ring in a small lockbox. It turned easily, which told me precision still worked somewhere. Nico asked for a train story where the conductor kept schedules safe. I told him a short one about colored signals and careful stops, and he fell asleep before the caboose, because children trust endings when the middle is steady. In the quiet, the refrigerator hummed like a soft engine. The shredder in the den started once and stopped as if a sheet had tested the blades and changed its mind. I flipped the mail so addresses face down and left the unsealed envelope in the outbox on purpose. I opened my laptop and saw the spreadsheet with initials and dates still honest. I copied it to Archive A and to Archive B, checked timestamps, and minimized the window as footsteps moved behind me. I did not want a draft misread by anyone who thinks drafts are verdicts. I placed a sticky note on the fridge that read "Bring forms," which is a sentence that asks nothing and prepares everything. In our room, I set a folded blanket on the foot of the bed, then carried a pillow to the guest room. And this simple choreography announced separate sleeping better than arguments do. Maya came in late, smelling like heaters and wind, and she announced that people loved her reel about joy. I said posts are not proof. She said I sounded like a spreadsheet. I said spreadsheets remember accurately when people do not. She said the family thought I was punishing her with distance. I said distance protects a house from unnecessary fire. She said a stranger's hand meant nothing. I said a line means something even when the crowd chooses not to see it. She said I would ruin our reputation if I kept acting like a guard. I said I would protect our son and our schedules and our sleep. She said her mother wanted to visit to talk sense into me. I said visits require respect for rules in this house. She rolled her eyes and set her phone to record herself breathing calmly, which is a performance the body eventually refuses to maintain. I poured water, wiped the counter, and did not offer an argument to any camera. Later, in the school pickup line rehearsal, because I like to practice the small routes that keep a week humane, I showed Nico where to look for me, where not to cross, and how to read a hand signal that means stop even if you want to run. He liked the painted arrows on the asphalt and walked them like a maze with an answer you can trust. A pair of parents stepped near us and spoke in low voices about a pole in someone's story, and their eyes traveled to my face and then away like magnets avoiding true north. I let the moment pass. Rhea texted that she would take Nico Saturday morning if I needed space. I thanked her and asked for a quiet breakfast window. She said yes and added a heart, which is a symbol that still earns its place when used sparingly. We drove home under a sky that forgot to be dramatic. I set the evening in order. Bath, story, bed, lights, quiet. The apartment made the soft noises that mean the building remembers how to stand. I set my phone to allow only school and Rhea to break the night. The hallway light made a thin stripe on the floor like a line I could follow if the house went dark. I listened once at the door and heard steps on the landing pause as if a visitor reconsidered a knock. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a call labeled private. I let it ring out and wrote the time down. The parking garage held a clean kind of silence, the kind that lets a man hear his own choices, and I stood beside a pillar painted B2 to let the air settle around me. The concrete smelled like old rain and rubber, and somewhere a vent pushed a slow breath into the dim. I put on my headphones, not for music, but for a small boundary that tells the world I am on a serious call. I did not start the call yet. I set my grocery bag in the trunk, lined the handles together, and closed it softly. My phone showed a quiet note I had set earlier. Downtown, 4:40 p.m. No location, no invite. I let it exist without sound. A number without a name tried to reach me. I muted it. I watched the missed call line collect the time, then filed the time in the small card in my wallet where honest minutes live. A car rolled past, slowed, and then continued when the driver saw I was not a scene. I placed my palm flat on the car roof and told myself to say only what I could repeat on paper. I opened the voice memo app, set it to record, then paused. I would use my own voice only for notes to myself, alone, in silence. I started the serious call with short sentences and no names, describing only what had already happened and what needs to be kept safe. I said I was not asking for a fight, only for a record. I said a child's schedule matters more than opinions. I ended the call and lowered the headphones around my neck so I could hear the stairwell door when it opened. The door stayed still. The garage returned to its low hum. On the metro platform, yellow lines held the quiet authority of rules that save strangers. I stood behind them. The train arrived with a soft rush, and I took a place by the window where the glass shows you your own face and the faces beyond it. 2 teenagers filmed themselves, lost in their own frame, and I let them keep it. A pop-up on my screen glided through. Unknown number, again. I dismissed it and typed in my notes. Keep records kind. Do not taunt. Handle it properly. I underlined properly once. The lights in the carriage flickered at a tunnel joint, then steadied. I breathed in for 4, out for 6, felt the car sway and accept my pace. At home, I set the bag on the counter, washed my hands, and dried the sink until the metal shone. I flipped the mail so the address is face down and left the unsealed envelope in the outbox on purpose, because an open mouth of paper reminds a person that not all words have been sent yet. I aligned the 3 binders, home, auto, bank, so their spines made a straight margin on the shelf. In the small desk, I unlocked the drawer and placed a single USB labeled with today's date beside the others. I closed the drawer until the lock clicked once. The sound reassured me like a seatbelt catching before a long road. Maya came in with the phone glow still on her face and said people loved the reel where she explained joy to serious men. I said posts are not policies. She said I made everything into a policy. I said policies keep 3 lives from falling into a hole. She asked if I was done being dramatic. I said I was done appealing to a crowd for sense. She asked if I would stop acting like a guard. I said I would act like a father who respects doors, nights, and rules. She said the stranger at the club did not matter. I said meaning is measured in behavior, not captions. Her mouth tightened and then smoothed into the expression she uses for cameras that pay. I opened the laptop and saw the spreadsheet with initials and dates exactly where I left it. I copied the file to Archive A, then to Archive B, checked timestamps, and minimized the screen when her steps neared the doorway. I am not hiding. I am preventing a draft from becoming a rumor. The shredder in the den hummed for a second, then went quiet again, as if someone had fed it a thought too thin to bite. I wrote 3 lines in the notebook. Kitchen conversation, weekend schedule, social posts note. I kept the words plain. I kept my hand steady. I kept my breath slow. In the hallway, I met Mr. Salas with his mail key. He nodded once, a small ledger entry in the day that told me some people still chose decency without applause. He did not ask questions. I said good evening. He said good evening. The exchange lasted 3 seconds and restored more than 3 minutes of calm. I returned to the kitchen and set 2 mugs on opposite counters again, not as a performance, but as a practical map. I filled one with hot water for tea and left the other dry and upside down. When Nico returned from Ria's place, he ran to show me a drawing of a train that stopped at all the right stations in the right order. I praised the order and the careful stops. Ria stood behind him and gave me a look that said, "I will be here on Saturday morning if you need me." I said that would help. She squeezed my shoulder and said nothing. Silence sometimes carries more strength than a speech. I placed Nico's drawing on the fridge with 2 magnets and made sure it did not cover the sticky note that reads "Bring forms." He asked what that means. I said it means be ready. He said ready for what? I said ready for life. After bedtime routines, I found Maya in the living room taking a photo of herself exhaling slowly, the caption about calm and boundaries. I said we do need boundaries. She said not the kind I make. I said the kind that keep a home from burning for other people's amusement. She said I would regret making her look bad. I said I do not control how people look when they stand in bright rooms and call rules a joke. I did not raise my voice. I did not list punishments. I listed facts. There would be separate rooms, no strangers near our door, no public posts about me without expecting a public response. She asked what response meant. I said it meant I will handle it properly. She asked if that was a threat. I said it was a promise to stay lawful and precise. I walked to the guest room and smoothed the bedsheet, then tucked the spare pillow under the lamp to stop its wobble. I tested the new small key on my ring in the lockbox. It turned cleanly. I placed the key back and closed my fist around the ring until the shape settled in my palm. In the gallery on my phone, I confirmed the image of a document with only the word statement at the top was saved and backed up. A cloud badge blinked and was gone. I closed the gallery and set the phone face down. I returned to the kitchen and poured out the remaining hot water. I placed my mug on the rack upside down beside nothing else. Maya stood in the doorway and asked what I would do if she posted about my control again. I said I would respond in the proper way at the proper time. She asked what that means. I said it means I will handle it properly. The building's elevator bell rang through the wall like punctuation at the end of a careful sentence. My phone vibrated. Dimitri's message arrived. Need a quick word first thing. The office tower lobby carried the kind of morning light that makes edges honest, and I arrived early because precision keeps a man steady when rooms prefer spectacle. I confirmed that Nico was with Ria and that my phone would only accept their calls. I stood near, not in, the main flow of foot traffic, because order begins with not blocking strangers. The security guard nodded once and kept the queue moving. Elevators opened and closed with the soft breath of a building doing its work. Ivy appeared first, phone already lifted, and then lowered it when faces turned. Maya followed with a practiced calm that brightened when she noticed lenses. I did not move toward her. I did not speak first. I let the hour mark approach like a line drawn across a page. An authorized server stepped into view, verified names, and confirmed identity with neutral language that asked nothing more than facts. Envelopes changed hands in the open, acknowledgement was recorded. The moment existed without performance from me. The documents served were a divorce petition with temporary financial and possession orders. Custody planning was implied by what took effect today, nothing more said aloud. The lobby did not pause. A courier signed a clipboard. A plant cart rolled past. Someone laughed about a meeting on 13. Life insisted on continuing while process took its small, exact shape. Maya asked if I understood what I was doing. I said I was following procedure. She said I was cruel. I said I was being clear. Ivy lifted her camera again, and then found the courage to lower it when a bystander shook a head. Cade stood near the directory and pretended to read the tenants, as if letters could hide him. The server confirmed completion and stepped away. I kept my posture square, not large. I breathed in for 4 and out for 6. I checked my watch, not her face. I did not fill the air with reasons. The reasons were written where reasons belong. The guard returned to his station. The lobby clock clicked. The elevator chime marked the half hour. I folded my copy once and placed it in a slim folder that fit inside my jacket without bulging. I sent Ria a single word that meant on schedule. I turned toward the doors because there was nothing else to add that would improve the truth. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.